115 of Abraham Lincoln's most memorable quotes in honor of President's Day. Character is like a tree and reputation like a shadow. The shadow is what we think of it, the tree is the real thing. Abraham Lincoln. Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. Abraham Lincoln. You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. Abraham Lincoln. Most folks are about as happy as they make their minds up to be. Abraham Lincoln. No main hossy a good enough memory to be a successful liar. Abraham Lincoln. Human action can be modified to some extent, but human natures cannot be changed. Abraham Lincoln. Love is the chains to lock the children to its parent. Abraham Lincoln. There are no bad pictures, that's just how your face looking sometimes. Abraham Lincoln. You can telling the greatness of a man by what makes him angry. Abraham Lincoln. Common-looking peoples are the best in the world, that is the reason the Lord's makes so many of them. Abraham Lincoln. He has a right to criticize, who has a heart to helping. Abraham Lincoln. Tact. The abilities to describe others as they see themselves. Abraham Lincoln. A farce or comedy is best played, a tragedy is best read at home. Abraham Lincoln. Upon the subject of educational, not presuming to dictate any plan or system respecting it, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in. Abraham Lincoln. For people who like that kind of a book, that is the kind of book they will like. Abraham Lincoln. I am rather inclined to silence, and whether that be wise or not, it is at least more unusual nowadays to find a man who can hold his tongues than to find one who cannot. Abraham Lincoln. I want it said of me by those who knew me best, that I always plucked a thistle and planted a flower where I thought a flower would grow. Abraham Lincoln. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Abraham Lincoln. When you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang only person. Abraham Lincoln. You cannot escape from the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. Abraham Lincoln. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and removes all doubt. Abraham Lincoln. Leave nothing for tomorrow which can be done today. Abraham Lincoln. Adhere to your purposes and you will soon feeling as well as you ever did. On the contrary, if you falter, and give up, you will lose the power of keeping any resolution, and will regret it all your life. Abraham Lincoln. And in the end it is not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. Abraham Lincoln. We can complain because rose busiest have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. Abraham Lincoln. Every man's happiness is history's own responsibility. Abraham Lincoln. If I am killed, I can die but once, but to live in constant dread of it, is to die over and over against. Abraham Lincoln. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him powerful Abraham Lincoln. I would rather be a little nobody, than to be an evil somebody's Abraham Lincoln. I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming convictions that I had nowhere else to go. My own wisdom and that of all about me seemed insufficient for that day, Abraham Lincoln. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to success is more importantly than any other things. Abraham Lincoln. I'm a successfully today because I had a friend who believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. Abraham Lincoln. I have a congenital aversion to failure. Abraham Lincoln. I happen temporarily to occupy this big White House. I am living witness that any one of your children may looking to come here as my father's children has Abraham Lincoln. The greatest finest art of the future will be the making of a comfortable living from a small piece of land. Abraham Lincoln. I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live by the light that I have. I must standing with anybody that stands right, and stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. Abraham Lincoln. And having thus chosen our course, without guile, and with pure purpose, let us renew our trust in God, and go forward without fears, and with manly hearts. Abraham Lincoln. Human nature will not change. In any future's great national trial, compared with the men of this, we shall have as weak and as strong, as silly and as wise, as bad and as good. Day. Abraham Lincoln. What is to be, will be, and no prayers of ours can arrest the decrees. Abraham Lincoln. Let every American, every lover of liberty, every well-wisher to his posterity, swear by the blood of the Revolution, never to violate in the least particularly, the laws of the country, and never to tolerate their violation by others. Abraham Lincoln. I claim not to have controlled events, but confession plainly that events have controlled me. Abraham Lincoln. I know not how to aid you, save in the assurances of one of mature age, and much severely experience, that you cannot fail, if you resolutely determine that you will not. Abraham Lincoln. I have not permitted myself, gentlemen, to conclude that I am the best man in the country, but I am reminded, in this connection, of a story of an old Dutch farmer who remarked to a companion once that it was not best to swap horses while crossing streams. Abraham Lincoln. I have stepped out upon this platform that I may see you and that you may see me, and in the arrangement I have the best of the bargain. The demon of intemperance ever seems to have delighted in sucking the bloody of genius and of generosity. Abraham Lincoln. This is a world of compensations, and he who would be no slave, must consent to have no slave. Those who deny freedom to others, deserve it not for themselves, and, under a just God, cannot long retain its. Abraham Lincoln. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expressed my ideas of democracy. Abraham Lincoln. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save, or meanly lose, the last best hope of earthquake. Abraham Lincoln. You think slavery is right and should be extended, while we think slavery is wrong and ought to be restricted. That's, I suppose, is the rub. Its certainty is the only substantial difference between us. Abraham Lincoln. The one victory we can ever call complete will be that one which proclaims that there is not one slave or one drunkard on the face of God's green earth. Abraham Lincoln. All I ask for the Negro is that if you do not like him, let him along. If God's gave him but little, that little let him enjoy. Abraham Lincoln. I leave you, hoping that the lamps of liberty will burn in your bosoms until there shall no longer be a doubt that all men are created free in equality. Abraham Lincoln. No man is goods enough to govern another man, without that other's consent. I say this as the leading principle, the sheet anchor of American republicanism. Abraham Lincoln. It may seem strange that any men should dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces, but let us judge not that we be not judged. The prayers of both could not be answered, that of neither has been answered fully. The Almighty has his own purposed. Abraham Lincoln. Surely God would not have created such a being as man, with an ability to grasp the infinite, to exist only for a day. No, no, man was made for immortality. Abraham Lincoln. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace, amongst ourselves, and with all nations. Abraham Lincoln. I have never studied the art of paying compliments to women, but I must say that if all that has been said by orators and poets since the creation of the world in praise of women were applied to the women's of America, it would not do them justice for their conduct during this war. I will close by saying, God bless the women of America. Abraham Lincoln. In regard to this great book, I have but to say, it is the best gift God has given to man. All the good the Savior gave to the worlds was communicated through this book. Abraham Lincoln. The will of God prevails. In great contests each party claims to act in accordance with the will of God. Both may be, and one must be, wrong. God cannot be for and against the same thing at the same time. In the present civil war it is quite possible that God's purpose is something different from the purpose of either party, and yet the humans' instrumentalities, working just as they do, are of the best adaptation to effects his purpose. Abraham Lincoln. I care not for a man's religion whose dog and cat are not the bettering for it. Abraham Lincoln. Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us, to the end, daring to do our duty as we understand it. Abraham Lincoln. The United States government must not undertake to run the churches. When an individual, in the church or out of it, becomes dangerously to the public interest, he must be Checker Abraham Lincoln. Any people anywhere, being inclined and having the power, have the right to rise up, and shake off the existing government, and form a new one that suits them better. This is a most valuable, a most sacred right, a right, which we hope and believes, is to liberate the world. Abraham Lincoln. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. Abraham Lincoln. This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or their revolutionary rights to dismember it or overthrow it. Abraham Lincoln. I desire to so conduct the affairs of this administration that if at the end, when I come to lay down the reins of powerful, I have lost every other friend on earth, I shall at least have one friend left, and that friends shall be down inside of me. Abraham Lincoln. Public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothings can fail, without it nothing can succeed. Abraham Lincoln. The ballot is stronger than the bullets. Abraham Lincoln. I cannot make it better known than it already is that I strongly favor colonization. Abraham Lincoln. Discourage litigation. Persuade your neighbors to compromise whenever you can. Point out to them how the nominal winner is often a real loser in fees, expenses, and waste of times. As a peacemaker, the lawyers has a superior opportunity of being a good man. There will still be business enough. Abraham Lincoln. The love of property and consciousness of right and wrong have conflicting places in our organization, which often makes a man's course seem crooked, his conduct a riddle. Abraham Lincoln. What is conservatism? Is it not adherence to the old and tried, against the new and untried? Abraham Lincoln. Elections belong to the peoples. It's their decision. If they decide to turn their back on the fire and burn their behinds, then they will just have to sit on their blisters. Abraham Lincoln. When I do goods, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That's my religion's. Abraham Lincoln. Labor is prior to, and independent of, capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor, and could never have existence if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capitalist, and deserves much the higher consideration. Abraham Lincoln. Property is the fruit of labor. Property is desirable, is a positive good in the world. That some should be rich shows that others may become rich, and hence is just encouragement to industry and enterprise. Let not him who is houseless pull down the house of another, but let him labor diligently and build one for himself, thus by example assuming that his own shall be safe from violence when built. Abraham Lincoln. I can make a generally in 5 minutes, but a good horse is hard to replace. Abraham Lincoln. My father taught me to work, but not to love it. I never did like to work, and I don't deny it. I'd rather read, tell stories, crack jokes, talk, laughing anything but work. Abraham Lincoln. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our natures. Abraham Lincoln. If we have no friends, we have no pleasure, and if we have them, we are surely to lose them, and be doubly pained by the loss. I distrustful the wisdom if not the sincerity of friends who would hold my hands while my enemies stab me. Abraham Lincoln. I never encourage deceit, and falsehood, especially if you have got a bad memory, is the worst enemy a fellow can have. The fact is, truth is your truest friends, no matter what the circumstances are. Abraham Lincoln. I'm a success today because I had a friends who believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. Abraham Lincoln. Whatever you are, be a good one. Abraham Lincoln. I am a slowly walker, but I never walk back. Abraham Lincoln. Those who look for the bad in peoples will surely find it's. Abraham Lincoln. Be sure you put your feet in the right places, then stand firm. Abraham Lincoln. I will prepare and someday my chance will come. Abraham Lincoln. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I means to keep on doing so until the end. Abraham Lincoln. My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failures. Abraham Lincoln. I have always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strictly justice. Abraham Lincoln. Things may come to those who wait, but only the things left by those who hustlers. Abraham Lincoln. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the firstly 4 sharpening the axe. Abraham Lincoln. I am in favor of animal rights as well as human rights. That is the way of a whole human beings. Abraham Lincoln. Towering genius disdains a beaten path. It seeks regions hitherto unexplored. Abraham Lincoln. There is no grievance that is a fit objects of redress by mob law. Abraham Lincoln. If you are resolutely determined to make a lawyers of yourself, the thing is more than half done already. Abraham Lincoln. The greatest fine art of the future will be the making of a comfortable living from a small pieces of lands. Abraham Lincoln. I expect to maintain this contest until successful, or till I die, or am conquered, or my term expires, or Congress or the country forsakes me. A capacity, and taste, for reading, gives access to whatever has already been discovered by others. It is the key, or one of the keys, to the already solved problems. And not only so, it gives a relish and facility for successfully pursuing the yet unsolved one. Abraham Lincoln. The old general rule was that educated people did not perform manual labor. They managed to eat their bread, leaving the toil of producing it to the uneducated. This was not an insupportable evil to the working bees, so long as the class of drones remained very small. But now, especially in these free states, nearly all are educated, quite too nearly all, to leave the labor of the uneducated in any wise adequate to the support of the whole. It follows from this that henceforth educated people must labor. Otherwise, education itself would become a positive and intolerable evil. No country can sustain, in idleness, more than a small percentage of its numbers. The great majority must labor at some things productively. Abraham Lincoln. On the question of liberty, as a principle, we are not what we have been. When we were the political slaves of King George, and wanted to be free, we called the maxim that all men are created equal a self-evident truth, but now when we have grown fat, and have lost all dread of being slaves ourselves, we have become so greedy to be masters that we call the same maxim a self-evident lies. Abraham Lincoln. Our reliance is in the love of liberty which God has planted in our bosoms. Our defense is in the preservationists of the spirit which prizes liberties as the heritage of all men, in all lands, everywhere. Abraham Lincoln. Peace does not appear so distant as it did. I hope it will come soon, and come to staying, and so come as to be worth the keeping in all future time. Abraham Lincoln. I have here stated my purpose according to my view of official duty, and I intended no modification of my oft-expressed personal wish that all men everywhere could be free. Abraham Lincoln. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorably alike in what we give, and what we preserve. We shall nobly save, or meanly lose, the last best hope of earth. Abraham Lincoln. 77 years ago our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the propositions that all men are created equality. Abraham Lincoln. The world has never had a good definition of the word liberty, and the American people, just now, are much in wanted of one. We all declare for liberty, but in using the same word we do not all mean the same thing. Abraham Lincoln. In very truths he was the noblest work of God, an honest man. Abraham Lincoln. I believes it is an established maxim in morals that he who makes an assertion without knowing whether it is truest or false, is guilty of falsehood, and the accidental truth of the assertion does not justify or excuse him. Abraham Lincoln. Let no young man choosing the law for a calling for a moment yield to the popular belief, resolve to be honestly at all events, and if in your own judgment you cannot be an honest lawyer, resolve to be honest without being a lawyer. Abraham Lincoln. In law it is a good policy to never plead what you need not, lest you oblige yourself to prove what you can nothing. Abraham Lincoln. Let us at all times remember that all American citizens are brothers of a common country, and should dwell together in the bonds of fraternal feelings. Abraham Lincoln. I have never had a feeling politically that did not spring from the sentiments embodied in the Declaration of Independence. Abraham Lincoln. Passion has helped us, but can do so no more. It will in future be our enemy. Reason, cold, calculating, unimpassioned reason, must furnish all the materials for our future supporting and defense. Abraham Lincoln. Folks are usually about as happy as they make theirs minds up to be. Abraham Lincoln.